Alright. Home Fries wants me to talk about his dingling. He wants me to debate police this. So, let's do it. Let's see what goes on here in this video.
It is Right Ruminations, and I am joined for a debate with Pilleater on the topic of capitalism, for or against. Before we launch into the opening statements, would you like to briefly introduce yourself, Pilleater?
Hi, all right. We briefly talked on Luke Ford sometimes. I actually was on Luke Ford, or I discovered Luke Ford through The Stark Truth with Robert Stark, and I kind of flirted for about a year and a half with Luke Ford's program. Come on and off. There's always internet drama, like there always is, but there's always interesting characters coming on the Luke Ford show. I tend to go back and forth with what's on the internet, and I've been associated with somewhat of the far right scene for some time, but I don't like to put myself in a box where to get labeled as a Nazi or something, because that's not true. I look at myself as an artist and an individual, and so I just work with the name Pilleater or Francis Nally on the internet and just do whatever artistic endeavors. So yeah.
Okay, very good. So because I am arguing in the affirmative, I will give my opening statement first. I think that in any discussion like this, it's important to begin by defining what we mean by capitalism. This does not mean that this is the eternal definition of capitalism.
Yes, that's critically important. What do we mean by capitalism? So, we're off to a good start in that capacity. I need to take some notes here. That's why I paused it. All right.
It does not mean that I wish to haggle over definitions. It simply means that in order to have an intelligible conversation about it, we have to define working terms for our arguments at the outset of any given conversation. And the definition that I would like to use for capitalism in this instance is simply that of economic freedom and property rights. It's essentially the libertarian definition of capitalism, loosely speaking. So I do not mean capitalism in the sense of anything that has to do with money or banks. I do not mean Hamiltonianism. I do not mean corporatism. I mean whatever your policies on other issues, insofar as you are advocating capitalist policy, you are advocating economic liberalism. Now, I believe that this is something which is ultimately beneficial for the continued maintenance and prosperity of Western civilization, for one, because of the prosperity and conveniences that it affords. I think that as folks living in a capitalist or comparatively capitalist society, we have a difficult time knowing what it would look like living in a pre-capitalist society, because even most of the societies that today we would call socialist have strong elements of capitalism in them. I think that, for example, the live stream that we are speaking in right now is one of the benefits of capitalist prosperity, ingenuity, productivity. I think that most of the deficiencies that are often pointed out in capitalism are due to socialist anomalies within the capitalist framework. So, for example, the housing crash, the bubble in the housing market, is something that is often pointed out. Yet, as Tom Woods establishes in his book Meltdown, there was serious government involvement in the 90s and in the early 2000s, precisely in interfering with the stock market by the intermediary of systematically lowering interest rates, that this was able to be brought about. On a deeper level, however, I believe that it's important to look at, for in a system, in any economic system, whether or not it facilitates that which is the deepest, truest meaning in life. And this is something that transcends mere material limits. I believe that the highest purpose of man is curiosity, self-actualization, a kind of, you might say, supermaterial investigation, immediate contemplation of individual experiences. So, for example, the desire to pursue religious truth, to purchase great works of art, or to be able to attend places where they are displayed, to be able to engage in this journey of self-discovery, I believe is something that we imagine to have been more present in past societies because we see the works of art that came out of these societies. But I think that this ultimate individual sense of the preciousness of the individual experience of beauty and contemplation is something which is really made possible with leisure, with material wherewithal. The fact I can go on the internet and look at any piece of art, listen to any great piece of classical music, and have the leisure time to travel to places if I so desire and see these things, but I don't even have to. I think that the alt-right, not that I'm saying that either of us is textbook alt-right, but this phenomenon of the dissident right, of the dissident voices on the internet, is something which, even though many of its members criticize capitalism, it's something which is facilitated by the prosperity of a capitalist framework. That is, this ability to platform ourselves, to have a genuinely intellectual existence. And free speech, although free speech is under threat right now, it's still much stronger than it is in traditional societies where you really can't venture outside of the accepted norm. For example, it's much easier to debate religious matters than it would be in the past. Aristotle believed that contemplation was the activity of the gods and therefore the highest end of man. This is something more possible under capitalism, because if you do a one-by-one comparison, I think it's unquestionable that freedom of speech in capitalist societies is much stronger. The ability to pursue truth is much greater in a capitalist society than in any non-capitalist or pre-capitalist societies. And I can't emphasize that enough. Freedom of speech is something that has arisen in the context of capitalist societies. And I would put this question to anyone who is uneasy with this, or it doesn't really seem to fit with their conception of the right or tradition. I would say, where would you really rather live? Would you rather live in say early modern France, where you had situations where lower class men were never really to experience any of the great fruits of civilization, the great contemplative fruits, and where five men would often have to sleep in the same bed simply for warmth? Or would you rather live in a society where you can at least choose to pursue transcendence, the pursuit of your own, the actualization of your own inner being as an individual, albeit with classical tastes, if that is your preference? Would you rather live in a society where that's possible, or in a society that suffers from the constrictions of societies as they've existed under pre-capitalist conditions? I will end my opening statement there.
All right. Well, one thing about me that's interesting about me is that I became interested in the far right when I was about 17 years old. I was absorbed into the music subculture, in particular skinhead music. I liked esoteric Nazism, probably because of Miguel Serrano and Julius Evola and Savitri Devi. But the important part is I asked those big questions of why are these groups of people hated if they have a good reason to do what they do? You know, back in 2007, I thought American Renaissance was like a strange website similar to NAMBLA, and Voice of Reason Radio Network that I had Robert Stark on. It was full of strange people, but with new ideals and interesting things I thought were interesting. But that was a decade ago, and a part of my youth has died. As I grow older, I understand the world in a new perspective with new things I experience. I'm still a kind of growing person. But I remember a few years back when I was 22, I was at my first white nationalist meeting, basically a secret countercurrents meeting in Philadelphia. And I was nervous because one, being socially awkward, you're at a clandestine meeting of white nationalists, and these are a party that's kind of, they are not in this kind of, if you want to say capitalist, it's more like creating somewhat of a national socialist or national society. But even to some extent, I was there being awkward talking about Jack Donovan and something called quote unquote homo nationalism, talking about gay rights in the far right. So that stuff didn't bug me back then because I thought it's a room full of weirdos. None of this is going to become true. And things like that, you know, people get into the scene and opinions change. I also actually a year or 2 years ago, I attended my first American Renaissance conference, and I was also at Unite the Right with some friends, and I met fascinating and interesting people. But I actually believed for some time that the far right would be intersected with all these beliefs of white nationalism, race realism, just your edgy, you don't like SJWs, liberalism, white identity here and there. But
okay, so right off the bat, it should be pretty clear that one of these people knows what they're doing and one of these people does not. What? Okay, first of all, Right Ruminations, that was great. Just, yeah, yeah. You know, like, as a coach, if I were going to coach you in debate, I would say something you ought to do a little bit differently is block them out for me. Like, all right, so I got these blocks of arguments. I got a block of argument that says it's definitional, mechanical. What comprises capitalism? Which you do. You draw a distinction between finance. You narrow your definition of capitalism beyond that which you need to. But I understand why you're doing it. You're setting yourself up to win the round, you know. But I mean, a reasonable enough distinction to make, nevertheless. And what you're saying is capitalism and rights go hand in hand. That to the extent that there are problems in capitalism, they're typically problems of socialism. I would say that there are legitimate problems of capitalism that cause anti-competitive results if left unconstrained. So I would argue that, in fact, there are some of those deficiencies in capitalism that are actually problems of capitalism, and that some sorts of regulation are appropriate. We don't want to allow land monopolies, for example. I mean, of course, you might challenge the use of the we there and say we have no business making decisions as we's in general or something, but we got to operate in a real world where you know. But anyway, you and I'd love to chat with you, by the way, if you want to have a conversation sometime. You're correct. Your ruminations are right, and you're very articulate, and you're good. You're great. I agree with everything you say, and I agree with the way you're arguing it. You know, dissidence thanks to capitalism, free expression. So, but if I were coaching you, I'd say block these things out a bit and say, you know, first let's go over my definitional block, then let's go over my my values block, and let's go over my I guess you'd call it standards block or something, where your values are manifesting as actual standards that are applied, and you keep going back to that roadmap. Okay, so look, first I'm gonna make my case here. First I'm gonna do a definitional block, then I'm gonna do a values block, and then I'm going to do a mechanics block. Okay, and I'll explain what that means in a second. But in the definitional block, what I want to point out is, if for us to have a meaningful argument, like you said, we need to define these terms, and I'm distinguishing capitalism from these other things that are not. So if he's talking about these things, then he's not talking about capitalism by my definitions, and he needs to provide an alternate definition that I can use as well, just as he can use mine. Okay, like the best way to debate something like this would include a little bit more of that crystallization and road mapping and framing for the audience, so that everybody can keep in their mind. You go, well, so I got 3 blocks. We're just gonna think of them like this in your head. Square, triangle, circle. Inside the square, we got definitions. Inside the triangle, we got values. Inside the circle, we got mechanics. Now all of a sudden, they've got a clear, intuitive grasp of your case as a whole, and how it makes you affirm more clearly. But the thing is, what you're doing is absolutely spectacular, non-formal debate. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying there are some tricks from formal debate that we could apply to make you even stronger as a actual debater. But there's not much we could do to make you stronger in terms of your argumentation itself. Like, you clearly understand all the warrants and arguments and stuff. This other dude, he launches into this shit about white nationalism. He doesn't make any sort of definitional link at all. So he's ignoring framework entirely. What Right Ruminations did was he began his case with framework. Now, we can't expect Homie here to be responsive to Right Ruminations yet, because this is Homie's opening statement. So I don't need him to be responding to Right Ruminations framework, but he should have his own. He doesn't, and he just launches into shit without even considering what he should have learned from Right Ruminations' opening statement, even if he didn't know it coming in, which is, oh, I guess I do need to define some terms here. Well, let's see what he does.
It seems to me that right after post-United Right, there's something wrong, that no one is not just united against cultural Marxism, but it's bigger than just the right wing or something. And so I was an advocate and longtime fan of countercurrents, and I used to read the website daily. But after 6 years of reading the website, which helps me understand to read and write, I actually don't read it anymore. I guess I grew up out of it. And this kind of ties into how the far right ties into with capitalism. Is well, one, you might hear the PragerU kind of standpoint where, all right, well, in a republic society, you have to advocate capitalism because that's what's work, right? The acceleration of the West and the common concept of living a good life. But what's really popular on websites like Countercurrents in particular, they believe in Alain Badiou's concept of metapolitics, which was something in the 90s or earlier. And in the context of white nationalism, if you support Badiou's concept of metapolitics, then you can make everyone a white nationalist or a race realist. And that scene right now is you got to go on YouTube, you got to start a YouTube account and do all this. But it's this consideration, which also makes me critical actually of capitalism, is that metapolitics doesn't work because I believe that metapolitics in that concept, Badiou's concept, was actually co-opted by capitalism. To borrow something that Mark Fisher said in his book of Capitalist Realism, that you see this bigger problem now on the far right. For a long time, it's the belief was that the far right left one because of cultural Marxism from the Frankfurt School. The far right might have countercurrents or American Renaissance, and therefore you have to make fashion memes to get your view across. But it turns out this is just a practice of metapolitics, and you're being co-opted by capitalism and working within a market. And so, do normal people want to openly associate being self-aware that they're fighting for white survival, or do they want to sacrifice themselves and be like this Jesus figure when coming to save civilization, or they really want to act like this mother's knows best liberal professor trying to educate the foolish in something that is for their own good? And so you have this kind of martyrdom that's making the far right, or especially the countercurrent scene, going out to fight. Oh, it's all about white survival or white identity. And so, when you are in the far right, you are radical, and when you're radical, you like things like Julius Evola or reading Siege. But I think it's no longer this friendly postmodern meme culture that's getting across values of the far right, but it's rather something that purity.
Okay, so he said that he was going to make the link between white nationalism and capitalism. But instead, he described white nationalism as, what do you call it, a metapolitics or something? And he failed utterly to make the link. There's absolutely no link there, right? What is the link between white nationalism and capitalism? Would you say that it's proportional? Like, the more capitalist I am, the more white nationalist I am? Would you say it's causal, that being white nationalist causes capitalism, or the other way causal, that being capitalist causes white nationalism? What exactly are you saying? So a lot of big words, and I don't hear a goddamn word anywhere.
Pretty spiraling, and weeding out those who are not radical enough. And that it's no different from when I was attracted to it a few years ago or a decade ago when I was a teenager. I think it's went back to its skinhead hardcore roots, and it's this maybe hot topic lifestyle. And maybe it's just something of 2009, of 2014, when the far right, it was probably that gold age of the alt-right, where Nicholas Goodrich Clark and Black Sun and all that's this kind of eccentrics versus traditionalists. And I think more right rumination you're more on like this traditionalist side. I mean, you can be an eccentric, but the traditionalist is more for family, the state, this Heideggerian notion of the commune or something. But the more important issue is you have more centrics role playing as a traditionalist than you do the traditionalist trying to, traditionalist.
Okay, look at what he is doing. He's saying what we really need to do is understand what group you're in and whether that group's okay. This man is utterly wicked and has no idea that he is. He's a very smart ENFP who's using 6-slot demonstrative FE in place of his own FI to make decisions about argumentational stuff. He's using FI to frame it and say, I want this to be the case. I'm on this team. He might be just an FE user. I don't know. He might be an NTP even. But, oh my God. Do you not understand what you're doing, Pilleater? You're committing ontological violence in order to justify that your claim that the other side represents ontological violence. The hypocrisy, if you know what you're doing, you're wicked as fuck. I don't think you do, but I'm not sure. You may just have argued yourself into convincing yourself that all this bullshit means something. Establish your fucking warrants and links. You are just spewing nonsense out of your mouth, you shame monkey.
Naturally being eccentric. And so I think it's more like we're sincere people in all this, right? So just trying to tie this back into capitalism, I think that's the reason why the far right is so kind of segregated, is because
a good idea.
People like Emily Lucas or Matthew Feinbach that say all this stuff about I want National Socialism to come back or shock rock and stuff, but then they leave after all this stuff gets onto them because it's too much, or that the far right was just this vessel to express their individuality. And this is just something in this kind of Rene Girard mnemonic desire notion of people trying to find belonging within the system. And so real quick, I feel like the far right is missing this postmodern tradition, which Kashif Vikas of Meta-Right is arguing right now, that publications like Jacobin Mag and Zero Books and Verso are not popular because they're the new left, but because they provide alternatives towards capitalism, quote unquote, and internet culture which stems from it. Like even listening to the economist Dr. Richard T. Wolff, this can be fresh air. I mean, none of these sources actually promote, if you want to say, quote unquote, Jewish world order or some influence like that, nor do they discourage nationalism. I actually think anti-capitalism is not left wing or right wing. It's just what can be the system after post-capitalism. I think it might also be the reason why Eric Streicher on YouTube is popular right now, because he's a sincere national socialist.
So he is at no point defining capitalism, responding to the other guy's definition of capitalism, understanding that it needs to be defined in order to discuss it. He's begging the question, assuming that because people are talking interestingly about what the post-capitalist milieu might look like, that it's actually, we agree that capitalism is bad. This is a clusterfuck of rhetorical disaster of epic proportions. Pilleater, fuck off. Your bullshit doesn't fly for a second. You come and you explain this to me. You come here and you explain what you mean. I can't watch any more of this. It makes me angry. It makes me offended. You are utilizing the gifts of liberty to argue in favor of oppression, and you don't even say anything. You fucking piece of shit. Oh my God, I can't watch the rest of your video ruminations because this guy is making me quiver with rage. It's fucking unacceptable. It's so goddamn unacceptable.